In business, we are confronted with both moral and legal questions. Those that choose to do the right thing are not always noticed. Those who choose to work outside the boundaries of law and ethics are well known. Welcome to BUL3130 Business Law and Ethics. Professor Thornton will be here momentarily.
Welcome to the midterm review for BUL3130. We're going to get started with this. It's not going to take real long, maybe 15 minutes tops, maybe a little bit more, hopefully not too much more. But we're going to go over the midterm, a couple of pointers, things to think about as you do it. We'll talk about how much time you have, when it's going to open, and those things. We'll get that knocked out first. So the first thing I want to do is go over how long it's going to be for you to take it, what your time limit is, and when it's going to open. So it'll open on Thursday, the 26th. So it'll be like most of your assignments open up the beginning of the day, 12 o'clock, midnight. Your assignment will open up, and you'll be able to work on it with one attempt, just like the quizzes have been. It's going to be very similar to the quizzes. Like I said, it'll open on the 26th and close on the 29th. So that gives you Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday to complete it one of those days. I will caution you that do not wait till the last minute for this. It does show in the quizzes when you're waiting till the last minute. It's fairly easy to tell which ones were done that way, because a lot of times those will be the ones that will have a sequence of questions that are not completed, or you can tell they're done in haste. So make sure you're giving yourself plenty of time. Now, once you started, you will have 1 hour and 45 minutes to complete it. So a considerable larger amount of time than what you normally have for the quizzes. There are a total of 50 questions, so more questions is the reason for the extra time. And you will have 45 of those be multiple choice. 5 of those will be essay questions. All right, so similar setup to the quizzes. You're going to have the essay questions at the end. But let me go ahead and just kind of get you thinking about doing those essay questions first. The point values that are lost on the quizzes, when those aren't completed, change letter grades. All right, so going from an A that you had knocked it out of the park on a multiple choice and not getting those completed will crush your grade. And don't accept that type of issue with your grade. You want to make sure that you're getting those done first. Like I said, there are 5 of those. I'll kind of go over those toward the end of this. I don't want to get you going with the rest of the questions. The other 45 are in the multiple choice setup like you normally have. There's a considerable amount of this that covers torts. I got to set it up that way just so that's the most familiar items in your mind, because that's what we just went over was the tort section on intentional torts and negligence, those type of things. So you will have quite a few of those. There are some questions to talk about the various defenses that you could have to a tort. Also, certain defenses that work with a criminal charge or crime, those type of things. So make sure you're familiar with those. The privileges that we discussed as we were going through the chapter on torts, make sure those privileges, you understand those. Go back over the Constitution and look at that. There's questions about a couple of the amendments there. Do not tie yourself just to the amendments that were on the PowerPoint. Make sure you're looking at all the amendments that the book covers and how it covers those. You want to make sure that those are going to be familiar to you, where you can go over those. There are a couple of questions that will give you a scenario, and you'll have to decide if there is a tort that has happened, or if there was not anything that would be considered a tort when it comes to tort law. You also have some questions covering Sarbanes-Oxley and the different acts that work toward corporate governance, and how corporations can be held accountable for the actions of their employees. So make yourself familiar with those. Also, some of the acts that go with that, as far as the way that corporations can interact with their employees and the public, those type of things. You want to make sure that you're familiar with that. Understand and know, so you can see it in a couple of questions. What constitutes a diversity of citizenship? Remember, the diversity of citizenship is when the federal courts can hear a court case that would be handled normally in the state courts, depending upon the amount of money that's being sought as far as damages go, and the location of the citizens. So citizens of different states and how it applies to them. Also, possibly citizens of foreign countries. For the most part, when we think about diversity of citizenship, we want to concentrate on the citizens from different states. Understand what intent is. Intent with, when we think about it for a criminal act or a tort, when we think about what intent is, it's going to be very similar as far as the meat of what intent, what intent covers. That's going to be a desire for the consequence that happened to happen by either the defendant or the tortfeasor, however you want to look at that. They intended that consequence to happen. So there's the intent. They had a desire for it to happen. And that desire for it to happen is what leads to their showing their full intent when either prosecuting a case or doing a intentional tort case and being the plaintiff in that and proving the intent of the person who is on the defense. We're also going to look at how the Supreme Court works, what the supreme law of the land is. There are a couple of questions to deal with the court system that we went over early in the term, so that would be in there too. There are a few questions, at least two, maybe three. I'm not exactly certain, but I know at least two questions that deal with ethics and ethical theory and what that is derived from. So you'll need to kind of review that section. One that stands out is deontological, so make sure you're looking into that and you have a good idea of what goes into that theory of ethics. What does Congress do? How does Congress work within what is considered necessary and proper clause in the Supreme Court's view? So what is the Supreme Court's view of that clause, the necessary and proper clause? Like I said, you'll get a few of these that are going to be a scenario that it gives you about an incident that happened, and it'll ask you what the tort was, if there was a tort, or what the intent or negligence may have been within that specific scenario. Know what the Eighth Amendment covers. Once again, those amendments, know what they cover and how they work. Know what business torts are. And there's a couple of questions that involve business torts. Some that ask you what those torts consist of. One that'll give you a list of torts. You'll have to decide which one doesn't apply to a business. So you'll need to be familiar with those. Once again, just falling back into the torts where we were just recently at. And then there's going to be a few Latin words you need to familiarize yourself with because you will see those. The first one is going to be a writ of certiorari. That writ is how a case is heard in front of the Supreme Court. Know that if it is mandatory or discretionary, does the court automatically have to hear it just because it's there or not? Res ipsa loquitur. And once again, you need to familiarize yourself with that. res ipsa loquitur. It is in the book. Make sure you're familiarizing yourself with it. It was going over in the lectures also. And then the final one that really you need to kind of pay attention to is stare decisis. So make sure that you understand what stare decisis is and how it applies to common law, being kind of a basis for common law. And just for good measure, there's some canned spam on this one too. So make sure that you are familiar with that. You should recognize that one from the quizzes. Let's see what else before we get into those essay questions. The happenings of a trial, there's a couple of questions that will ask you about what goes into a trial and how that works as far as the different steps of it. So what is pre-trial? What happens during the trial? What are all the steps that we go through to get to that point and what gets us there? Know what your clauses are, the commerce clause. There was several questions on that on the quiz when we were covering that section. So know what the commerce clause really is. There was a couple of questions on it, and it was in one spot it would be answered correct and the other it wasn't. So get a good understanding of what the commerce clause is. Also, one case in particular that really stands out that you'll be questioned about is Brown v. Board of Education. It should be a familiar case to you. Most people know what that case is. We went over it in the lectures, so you will be familiar with if you go back and look at the lectures as far as what went on in the court system and civil procedure, those type of things. So make sure you understand those. All right, for the essay questions, and remember, before I start with these, I want to just one more time do these first. All right, if you're comfortable with it and you know you're going to get everything done, go with what's comfortable for you. But if you know that you're going to struggle a little bit on the essay questions, jump on those first. That way you get those knocked out and you're not, struggling going through it. It would be a shame to get the first 45 questions correct and have 45 out of 60 points and then lose the rest of those points on these questions. Actually, 45 out of 65 points. So it'd be a shame to lose those 20 points and completely just shoot yourself in the foot as far as your grade goes on this. So a couple things to think about with these. Understand what emergencies are. When we think about what an emergency situation in a negligence claim, how does the emergency work in negligence torts? In a tort for negligence, what do we consider emergency? So how does the emergency situation affect a person's liability? So a couple of big keys there. Negligence tort, the emergency situation, and the liability of the person who may be looked at as committing some form of negligence. So negligence in its own, the emergency situation, and what is liability in those cases. Give an idea of the court system. You're going to need to describe the court system. All right, so when you do this question is going to have several different parts. Make sure when you get to a question, if it tells you to describe something and then it asks you more questions about that you're doing all those pieces. Unfortunately, some of the points that you lose on the quizzes are because you're not answering the full question. So like with the quizzes, they're 3 points apiece. Sometimes you get 1.5 points because you answered only half of what the question was asking. So make sure you're answering all of it. Now, these questions are going to be 4 points apiece, so one more point higher. So it does, take a lot out of your grade when you're not getting these. So make sure that you're getting all the pieces into it. So if it has 4 or 5 pieces, you're answering everything possible in there. Yes, you do get partial credit for attempting and getting part of the answer correct, but it's really good to get full credit if at all possible, right? You want to make sure you're getting all the points you can. Know what appropriation is. And remember, that's in a business or in a tort setting, know what appropriation is. And then there's a couple more questions on the Commerce Clause. And then one question that gives you a fairly long scenario that you'll need to read through, and then it'll ask you to discuss the different theories of liability that would apply to it. All right, so one more time, it opens this Thursday, the 26th. It is going to be get back over to it, so make sure I'm not telling you anything wrong. 50 questions, 45 multiple choice, 5 essay questions. You have 1 hour, 45 minutes to complete it. All right, so it seems like a lot of time. When you think about it's 50 questions, that's going to give you less than 2 minutes a question. All right, so make sure that you're getting those in and getting them answered. It's not giving you that full amount of time. Well, actually, a little over 2 minutes a question. So you think about what the essay questions are going to be like, you need more than 2 minutes on those sometimes. So make sure that you're spending your time wisely. Do not start it. Do not start the exam at 10:59 and give yourself only an hour and lose 45 minutes of time you could be doing this. Try your best to get it done sooner rather than later. The last thing you want to do is be in the middle of the exam and time run out and it submits. I do not give extensions for the exams like I would for a quiz or for a case study or something like that. It would need to be a case-by-case issue, and it would need to be a major issue for me to be able to do an extension for this. I want these turned in on time. I'm normally not a real big stickler for getting everything turned in right on time, but I am for the exams. So make sure you're getting that. So that pretty much covers what I wanted to make sure that you got from the exam. And I'm going to cut the video off here. I don't want to spend any extra time. I know you're preparing for other midterms, not just mine. I don't want to be the only one that you're paying attention to for this coming week or couple of weeks. So make sure that you're looking at that. Be back next week with a new video for the new section, new chapters. So until then, stay safe and study hard.